Okay, so you can see here I've got a reasonable idea of the shell of my building now, and I want to start modelling some of those elements with a bit more detail. So I'm going to look at using the curtain wall tool mostly, but before I go too far there, I want to also just make sure that my solid walls are going to join properly to these curtain walls. And so what I thought I might show you first is actually just a setup using some solid walls for the, I'm going to do a retaining wall back here. And this is another thing you maybe want to think about as you're starting to set out the envelope of your building, where you have a wall that's up against a part of your site that's cut away. Obviously that's going to be a retaining wall, and if it's subterranean, in other words, probably in your car park or your basement, then you need to have tanking. And are you doing tanking with George? Yeah. So that's just a detail that you'll need to consider there. But then when it's above ground, then it's often a good idea to have that set away from the building, so you don't have to worry about waterproofing. Because if you have a wall that needs to be tanked that's part of a habitable space, there's a good chance that the tanking will fail at some point and you're going to get moisture in the interior. And so it's very common to have the retaining walls that are next to habitable spaces set away from the building the way that I brought the site away here. And so in that case you can just do a regular wall. It's still a retaining wall, so structurally it's different to probably your normal exterior walls, but you don't have to worry about tanking. And so you can draw that just using the regular wall tool. That should be pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to draw some standard walls here, and I'm going to make the level 1. Doesn't really matter at the moment, so I'll have to adjust the height in a minute. I'm going to draw it anti-clockwise, but remember you can always press space as you draw any wall to flip it to go the other way, so you don't always have to draw clockwise. And then in the 3D view, you can see then I've got a wall which is not the right height. So I'm going to select those 3 walls there and make the height just unconnected for now. And then you'll see when you select the wall, you can always use the arrows there to drag and adjust the height. And actually an interesting thing, when you're making retaining walls, you'll often see, so when people in general make retaining walls, what they'll sometimes try to do is slope the top of the wall. But if any of you have done any construction, you might know whether that's a good idea or not. So have any of you tried to, or have any experience building retaining walls? No?
Which way to slope it?
Yeah, you might, yeah. So would you, Jake, if you build a retaining wall, would the top of it be sloping?
The top of the retaining wall?
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. Yeah. So why wouldn't it be sloping?
Do you mean along the line of the ground?
Yeah.
Above it?
Yeah. So here you've got this retaining wall which is next to some sloping ground.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, especially if they've never actually gone and built one, they'll try and slope the retaining wall to follow the ground, which kind of seems natural,
so
but then...
You have a level footing,
Exactly. Yeah.
steel running up it, and then they might put the top of it just to follow the ground, but the retaining wall itself would be level.
Exactly. And so what materials would you use to build it?
Probably a block wall with porphyry and steel.
Exactly. Usually concrete block these days. Brick as well is common for older ones, but yeah, concrete block generally and exactly would be filled. You can do solid concrete, but it's harder. And so if it's concrete blocks are square, and they're going to step down to follow the slope rather than trying to slope. And even if it's solid, actually, it's quite hard to slope it. If you've got to have a slope done with your formwork, it's fairly difficult. You've got to put a piece on the top that's sloping, and then just think about what happens when you try to pour concrete with the top not being level. It's liquid, and it's quite hard to make that you can do it, but it's more difficult than if it's level. If it's level, then they don't even need to put a piece on the top. So generally, that's the way you want to be thinking when you're making things like this. Just think about the way it's built, and I don't want to say it's fun, but it's something that I enjoy when I'm doing my own work, because I do try and keep a couple of building projects on the go, and anything I can do myself, I try to go and do it. And so I've built a few retaining walls myself, except where you've got to have all of the steel working done by professionals. I get tradespeople in for that, but I do try and do anything that's feasible myself, and that has taught me a lot about construction. Like I said, retaining walls aren't too tricky. You've got to make sure they're structurally okay, and you can get your engineer to specify that, but then you can often have a go at building things like that. The reason I'm pointing all of that out is because you can then apply these principles when you're modelling in Revit, and you'll see here that I can easily have this wall brought down so that it has maybe this wall at the end still higher than it, and I'm just going to drag the arrow there to bring that height down. And then this one can come down a bit further as well, so that's stepping down fairly naturally with the wall at the back maybe being higher than the one that's coming at a right angle to it. But then this one here, if I bring that down, notice how it's not stepping properly. This one at the end should be going all the way. And so do you know how to change that when it's not joining in the order that you want it to? You might not have seen that. You can try changing the ends of the walls. I'll show you there's a really good option there, and it's going to tie in hopefully pretty well with the things we'll look at with curtain walls in a second. So a really useful option with walls is this wall joins tool. So you'll see it on the modify tab, you've got wall joins there. So this is a feature of Revit. Walls particularly have automatic joins. So they connect automatically in a way that's predefined. Other things in Revit are joined automatically as well, but you've got a bit more control over that because you're generally using this join option to join geometry together. So,
just right click on the circle that's
yeah, disallow join, yes. I'm going to look at that in a second. But so this is additional to that. So when you're doing that, you're overriding all of the joins. But this here is using the automatic joins, and there's still a great option using automatic joins. So when you click on wall joins, then you can go to any two connected or more than two connected walls, and when you hover over that join, you'll see this square come up. If you click there, then it's going to select that wall join, and then you can see you've got butt and miter as the two different automatic joining options. Sometimes you'll get square off as well. So you can switch between those two options. Butt is what you can see there, where the walls are joining at right angles. If you change to miter, you'll get a 45-degree join, which can be really useful for certain kinds of walls, but not this type. So here, butt is the option I want, and I'm going to go to next, and you'll see then it's going to change to the other option for joining these walls. So instead of joining with this wall going all the way to the end, now the bottom wall goes all the way to the end. So you can switch between those two options. I just need the second option there, and you'll see now if I go back to the 3D view, this wall at the back goes all the way to the end on both ends. Okay, and the way it's determined is the order you draw the walls. So because I drew these walls anti-clockwise, it started here, and so this wall took precedence over the next one. So the first wall always joins it to the end, basically. But you can obviously adjust that afterwards. And so that can be useful as well when you are looking at the way your curtain walls are going to join to other walls, because even curtain walls join automatically. Here you can see my curtain wall is going to the end, and I've got a wall here that's also going to the end because I've drawn it with finished face exterior. And curtain walls don't give you the option to have a location line, so they're always drawn to the centre. And so if the wall joins tool won't give you what you want, you can definitely look at using this disallow join option just to totally override the automatic joining of the walls. And so that's good if you know about that one. When you select any wall, right click on the grip and then you can just go to disallow join. And that way I can then select the curtain wall and do the same thing, right click, disallow join. And then if I drag that away, it won't try to connect it to the corner of that wall anymore. So sometimes the automatic joining just won't give you what you want. But often, it is still useful. So again here, dragging this one away, I don't even need to disallow that join, but it's still a good option if you're not sure, because it might try and reconnect later. And so what you'll often find with curtain walls is that you do need to adjust the placement before you go too far with the setup of the wall itself. So I've got the wall now set back from the edge. And that will give me a few other things like the position of my floor. So my floor here will probably need to be, well, you've got two options. You could have the curtain wall sitting on the floor, but I'm going to have mine set back because I want the curtain wall to cover that. And I'm going to have that set up with all of my floors. And so again, here I've got the curtain wall set back behind the edge of the roof, and later I'll need to bring that roof edge back, potentially. Or, well, there's two ways. Again, I could have that roof extending over the top. So you can, of course, attach, in fact, that's what I'll do now. I'm going to attach that curtain wall to the roof. And when you see this warning, it's usually okay just to choose the option on the left. So sometimes when people see these options about, especially warnings for curtain walls, because you can't click OK, you'll think that you have to just click cancel. But usually you can choose the option to the left, which is basically, going to let you continue. So if I choose delete elements there, it's going to remove the mullions at the top. Now, that wouldn't have mattered if I'd just used a simpler curtain wall, and that's what I'm going to change to now, and just go through the basic setup you can use for curtain walls. So I'm going to start by just isolating that element with the wall selected. Make sure you realise that curtain walls are made up of several elements, so you may be are selecting different parts of it without realising. You've got grids, panels and mullions. But then to get the wall, you can click on the outside usually to highlight the whole thing. Go to the glasses and then isolate element, and now I can just see the wall by itself. I'm going to select the wall again and then change it back to the simplest one, which is curtain wall 6mm thick glazing. And that's just a plain sheet of glass. And again here I've got a warning that's coming up telling me that it's going to delete grid lines. But if I click OK, it will keep those. It's just that they won't be associated with the type anymore. And I don't want that. I do want to remove them. So I'm going to click delete grid line. But then you can see I'm still left with the mullions going around the outside. And that's different to what you would get if you had made a curtain wall from scratch with curtain wall 6mm thick. So it'll just give you a plain sheet of glass normally. So just need to remember, if you change back to that wall type, you might then need to go and just delete those mullions around the outside. So you could select them individually, or another good way is just to make a window around the whole thing, go to filter, and then just turn off everything except mullions, and then you can just delete those. Okay, so I've got a plain sheet of glass, which is a really good starting point for your curtain walls. Like I said, if you start with storefront, you often spend more time fixing that than you would just setting up a new one from scratch. So with the curtain grid tool, you can manually draw curtain grid lines in. And that's a really, really useful option in many instances. I'm just going to reset my view so that I can see the floors as well. And I'm going to select those. So just going to use tab here to get the bottom floor there. and then, oh, missed it, got the curtain wall, but, oh yeah, I've got the floor. And so it's just a bit hard to see with my massing. Okay, so I'm going to isolate those again. Oh no, I didn't get the curtain wall. Okay, so let's just do that again. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to isolate those again. That's better. And then isolate again without those floors at the bottom. Okay, so again with the curtain grid tool, you can manually place your own grid lines. And that's really useful in situations like this where we need the grids to line up with the floors, for example.
You can't put a curtain grid on angle around.
You can. Yep. So the way you do that is by putting a reference plane in and then aligning it with that. And yeah.
You can snap the grid onto reference.
Yeah, I think you might have to use curtain systems, that's the only thing. So you can't do it with the basic curtain walls, yeah. But you can, yeah, definitely with curtain systems, you can, yep. So, again, actually, no, I'm just going to, here as well, you can click on that configure grid layout as well, and that gives you a few other options. Yep, so though, with the normal grid tool UI, you can't do angled walls, so, or angled grids, so here though I can just pick those lines and they probably will snap to my floors, but if they don't, you can always just use the align tool. And even if you want to lock those to your floors. And then you can still afterwards go and put in properties to make a type-driven curtain wall. So if I go to edit type now, and I'm just going to go to duplicate, and we'll call this facade wall. And then you've got your options for your vertical and horizontal grid. And so a good way of building this up is to try to get the grid set up first and then put your mullions in afterwards. So if you go to, for example, maximum spacing, 1500, I'll just leave it at that for now, and then I'll leave the horizontal grid. Click OK, and then I can see what the spacing's like. Yeah, it makes life a lot easier, and you can still go and adjust those afterwards. So back to here, I can then go to horizontal grid and make those make that fixed number. So I want I'm going to do maximum spacing again, sorry, and make that 3000. Yep. So you can see it's put those in spaced evenly, and I probably want to adjust them so that they're set out from the levels instead. So if you select any of those, you just need to unpin them, and then you can put your own spacings in. Okay, so having done that, now if I go back to edit type, oops, left out the E there, then you can have a look at putting mullions in. So again, it's good just to build this up gradually. So if I start with the rectangular mullions, these are 50 by 150, and I'm just going to set them for the interior type. It's going to put those over all of those horizontal grid lines, even the ones I've adjusted. And I can do the same thing for the vertical grid lines. But they're not the most attractive mullions. because they're quite large, and you might want to do something a bit more refined. So you can always, if you select any of those, go to, again, unpin, edit type, and you can just duplicate to make your own. So I might want these to be narrower for a start, so I might try 50 by, I'm not doing narrow, so I'm going to try 30, and I do want them to be less deep as well, so 30 by 80. Do you know where to find your extrusion profiles? Well, for aluminium anyway, Caprel have a pretty good catalogue, which has a lot of aluminium shop front profiles. For curtain walls, there are more specialised curtain wall systems, and you'll just need to look up those individual systems. But the sizes really vary a lot, so it's worth just having a look at some catalogues to see what the real sizes are. This is just indicative, and they usually won't be rectangular profiles. So here you can see I've changed the name, but I've got to then go and put those properties in. So it's 30 wide, which means the width either side will be 15, and then the thickness is going to be 80.
So you can do this without editing metric profile?
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Just do it in the type. So rectangular profiles, it's all set up, ready to go. And then, so you can see that it's changed this one. That looks much better, but the others haven't changed because they're defined in the type. So I've got to go and select the wall again, edit type, and now I'm going to change the vertical mullions only to the new one, 30 by 80. Oh, so, yeah, no, just vertical. I'm just going to do the vertical now. So if I click OK, you can see they've all changed, but now we've got another issue with the joining. So the final thing there, you can change the join condition to horizontal grid continuous. And that makes that much more automatic. Yep. Yep. So you can do lots of things with the mullions, just by editing the type, but the panels are a little bit more involved. So notice how the panel there isn't within the glass, also the glass isn't within the mullion anymore. So my glass is set out, and you'll see this more clearly in plan. So the glass is in front of the mullion. So you can actually fix that by going to the type as well. I'm going to show you how you can do this in the family, but in the type, in other words, by selecting the panel and then going to edit type, you can change the offset there. And so the reason that the glass will often become set out from the mullion is because this glass, this system panel glazed, is set up for that 50 by 150 mullion. Right, so that's a really deep mullion, 150, so that's that much. And so the glass is to one side of the centre, and that's why it's 37mm offset, because it'll fit within a 150 mullion. Measured from the centre line, that will work pretty well. But for a smaller mullion, that's going to be way too much. So I'm going to bring that back to 20. Click apply, and you can see they've all changed. The thickness of the glass is 25. Do you think that's anything like the real thickness of glass? No, nothing like it. Glass sizes are always, well, I always struggle to remember. It's 6 point something, and then it's 6. They're really accurate because it is made fairly precisely. But yeah, the smallest is about 6 point something. It goes up to about 10 point something, and then there are bigger thicknesses as well, but that's the normal range. So yeah, you could take it down to 10mm. Sometimes it's hard to see that though on your plan, so 15mm maybe could be good. And you can see there that's working pretty well now with my new mullion. Okay, so that's all type driven. So I've done all of that simply by adjusting the properties of those elements in the file, in the project file. And so again, once you start working with a wall like this, you can use tab to select the different parts. And then here I might want solid panels. So this is unfortunately where curtain walls won't be so automatic. If you want to have varying panels, the only way really is to go and manually change them. You can't set that up in the type. But you can select as a group like this, go to filter, and then just turn off the other elements. So I've just got the curtain panels there. Okay, I can then unpin them. In this case, they actually don't even need to be unpinned because I haven't set them in the type. That's a bit of a trick actually, I'll just show you. So in the curtain wall, if you go to edit type, there's an option there to set a curtain panel. If you choose that, it will set whichever panel you like, but if you don't choose an option there, it's just going to default to that glazed system panel. And so it's a bit of a trick. If you leave it on none, then the panels won't be pinned. But if I just choose glazed system panel, which is the one that it's using, system panel glazed, then that's set in the type and they'll be pinned. So I'd have to go and unpin them every time I want to change them. So often it's better just to leave that on none. If you just want glass, just leave it on none. And then just change that system panel. So again here now if I select, I've got all these pins coming up from the mullions, but because they're type driven, but not the panels. So again, filter, and then I've got just the panels selected, and I can go and change those to solid. And if you want to, you can edit those, duplicate, and we'll maybe make that solid, I don't know, red or something. Oops, not red. So solid red, and then I can set a different material. Okay, so I'll just quickly get a new material. So hopefully you're getting into the habit of making new materials as you go. And so here I've got a plastic material which I'll duplicate, and we'll call that, well, it's called plastic red. Yep, sure.
Every time I do that, every time I duplicate a material,
Yeah,
if I were to use the previous one,
yeah,
duplicate
it'll change both.
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you have to create a new material?
You don't have to, no. What you need to do is go to appearance and duplicate that as well.
Oh,
Yeah, it's doing the two duplicates that everyone forgets. Yeah, and look, it's actually I think one of the worst decisions they made when the developers were bringing in the new material system for Revit in 2012 or whenever it was. But it's just the way it is. So
could you use that? See at the bottom.
yeah. So here, if you go and make a new material from scratch,
Yes.
that makes a new appearance as well. So you don't have to duplicate both. So that's another option. But if you've got one, it's good to know. If you've got one there that you want to copy and reuse, you can always duplicate it here, as long as you remember to duplicate or replace the appearance as well. That's fine.
So how do you do it? You just right click on appearance?
Yeah, and then duplicate, and that solves it. The way you'll know if it's going to be a problem is if you see a number here. That if there's a number other than 0 here, it means the appearance is shared with another material. That's why it's changing the other one. Yeah, it's a common issue. It happens to everyone. Yeah. So then here I can just change the colour of the render appearance. So I'll just get like an Indian red or something. And then back under graphics, tick use render appearance, and the colour is going to match what I've done in the appearance. Okay, so that's easy. So then for your, if you have say operable windows within one of these, well, it'd be very difficult in this building anyway, but you may want that option sometimes to have different window types. And so one that I know people often want is louvers. And so I've given you a file to show you in the Revit library. Yeah, and actually, sorry, I'm glad I checked this because I don't think I've copied it as a separate family. I'm just going to grab the file. I've got it somewhere else.
Was it in curtain wall panels?
Oh yeah, sorry, I do have it here. So I've got glass louvers, and yep, sorry, I did put it there. I've got a solid louver one as well, which I'll get you later as another option. But I've got the glass one here. So it's in curtain panels, not curtain wall panels. Yep. So to bring that in, it's going to use tab, and then go to edit type, load. And then go to that library, curtain panels, choose glass louvers, click OK, and you can see there we've got obviously glass louvers set up in the wall there, in the panel, and so a property that I've set up in there that should work pretty well, if you go to edit type, is the ability to adjust the angle. So I'm going to change this to 45, click apply, and it's not working anymore. Okay, I'll go back and fix that. It should work. I might need to update it with one that I've done more recently. Yeah, it should work. So there, if you change the spacing, that should definitely work. Oh no, that's not working either. Okay, so there's some issue there. I'm going to get my my new ones and put them there. So I've got a few more recent ones. I'll browse and I'll stick those in that folder afterwards. I mean that one's okay, but I've got the one where the angle definitely will work. And I've got a solid one which has got a slightly different profile, which could be really useful when you're doing your rendering, because if you can adjust the angle of the louvers, you can let the sunlight in different ways, and that can be a really good thing to play with curtain walls, because you can have a huge wall of louvers and get some really nice views using the sunlight coming into your interiors. So I'll just bring back the rest of the model and just remind you, probably know this already, but if you have an area where you need doors, so for example here on this wall I've got down below, I'm just going to again isolate that one. I'll start by changing it to my own new curtain wall. And again, it's going to give me the option to delete mullions, so that's okay. I want to delete them. And then I've got the mullions on the edge turned off, which is normally the way I leave it, because often you won't want mullions if you want to have them recessed. Then you just don't show them in your curtain wall, and that's a nicer display usually. So they would still have the top and the bottom plate, but they'd be integrated or cut into the floor in some way, and the roof or probably the soffit or the. Yeah, oh yeah, definitely show that in the detail, exactly, that's right, just 2D rather than trying to model it all 3D. Yeah. And so then to put a double door in here, I'm just going to guess where that should be. Oh no, let's see if I can work out where the centre is. Oh yeah, okay, so I've got to change the number there. So, yep. And so there, it's giving me 14 grid lines. So a good option here is to try changing the vertical grid option to fixed number. And then if I click OK, you can see I can now adjust that that count and increase it by 1, so that I've got an odd number, which is what I want there, so that I can have a double door that's centred. That's just a little trick. And then now I can select the grid line there, add remove segments, and then just click on the one, unpin, and then I can again add remove segments and click on the one I want to take away. Delete elements, that's fine. And then using tab, just like before, to select the panel, edit type, and then there's actually a bit of a bug with 2015, it doesn't happen very often, but it happens almost every time with 2016 and above. So I'm pretty sure it's still happening with 2017, but definitely with 2016 it happens every single time. The load button there will get greyed out the first time. So it's only the first time, and if you see that button greyed out, what you need to do is just go to the Insert tab and use Load Family to load in a curtain wall panel. Any panel, doesn't matter which one, and then if you come back here, the load button is going to work again. It's just one of those things. So if we go to Load Now though, then I can just choose a curtain wall panel from the default library, and I'm just going to get one of these pre-made curtain wall panels. And so it's good to know that you have those different options for your curtain wall panels, and you can of course set any wall to be a curtain wall panel, and that will often solve a lot of issues. So you can use, even ones that don't make sense, like a brick wall, and that will open up a lot of possibilities sometimes if you put in a standard wall. So even sometimes just a thin wall like that, that gives you then the option to use doors and windows in curtain walls, because you can't place a regular door or window into a curtain wall, but once you've put a normal curtain wall in, a normal wall into a curtain wall panel, then you can place any door or window, which could take up the whole panel. And so you can get like a normal window into a curtain wall that way. But here again, I'm just going to use the correct curtain wall panel. And so now that it's loaded, I can just go to the list here and then find that curtain wall panel that I've previously loaded. And in the plan view, it will look just like a regular door. Okay, so you can flip it and do all the other things you can do normally with doors. But again, just like the glass panel, I might need to look at the offset. Going down to the properties at the bottom, you can see there the offset value. And if I want that opening, well, that's actually correct, because the hinge would need to be on the inside corner. But it might look better if you just bring that in slightly. So maybe 20 or something. So that's going to move it. And you can get away with that, even though in reality it wouldn't probably be built that way. There we are. Okay, so lots of options with curtain walls, and you can probably do most of the walls for a building like this using the regular wall tool and then setting it to curtain walls. You only need to use curtain systems for curtain walls that have irregular surfaces or different angles and things like that. And to set those up, you really need to know a bit about working with assemblies as well, which is a bit more involved. So that's using the massing tools. And so before you go too far with that, I'd spend a bit of time learning that mass modelling set of tools that I've been showing you earlier. And at first you'll think, well, massing's good only for those concept models I've been showing you. But then once you go further with assemblies, you can see that you can actually do a lot more with those tools. Again, using all the different options for assemblies that are mostly set up for things like curtain walls. But it gets pretty technical once you get into the setup. You've got to work with parameters and do those other things as well, but also then with massing. So maybe just to finish off, just using the regular curtain wall tool, you can still do a huge amount. And so I've got here this panel. If I go to Edit Family, then I can of course adjust that. And so I'd probably want these door handles to be on both sides. So that's a simple thing I can adjust just by selecting them both in 3D view. Can then go to the plan view and then just flip them using mirror and try to get the centre line, which of course they don't have set up, so I'll cancel that and put one in. Or sorry, I'll just use mirror draw axis. using the midpoint of the glass. Okay, but what you need to think about with curtain walls, and particularly curtain wall panels, is that, again, a bit like assemblies, they're heavily dependent on parameters. Because you can't change the size of a panel directly. You can never go in and say, I want the door to be 1200 wide or 2400 wide. It's always set by the grid. And so that means all of those elements in the curtain wall panel have to be set relative to this adjustable grid that can potentially be any size. So even the door handles here need to be checked to make sure that they're going to follow the rest of the panel. And so you can go into your type properties, and you can see there which properties have been defined, and you usually find that they won't have a property for the panel size. And so all you can do there is try to select these panels and adjust them. Usually undo it after you do that, but you can see there as I move these grid lines that the door handles are moving with them, which is what you want to make sure of. These door handles should work pretty well because they're defined, they're made with a sweep, and the sweep path would sit on a plane that's been predefined. So that reference plane there is controlling the location of those handles. But not everything's going to work that way, so you just need to check that. Okay, so that's ready to go, and I'll just save that now as a new family. So I'll save this to the P drive. Into the curtain wall panels folder there. In fact, I'll save it just into the other one, curtain panels. Okay, so now I can just select the door panel and change it to the new one that I've loaded. It's got door handles both sides. Maybe very last thing, and this will again just help you with families generally. You probably don't want the door handles to show in plan. So back to Edit Family, and then I can select all of those door handles, go to Visibility Settings, and just turn the option there for Plan RCP off, and also when cut in Plan RCP. OK, save it, load it back in, overwrite. That's going to hide the door handles. Just in the plan view, back into the 3D view, door handles both sides. Okay, so I hope that'll give you some ideas about what you can do with your walls. We'll look at maybe some other things later.